The night air in Victoria Island was cold and unusually quiet, the kind of silence that makes your heart feel heavier. Zainab Atakunal stood outside the house she had called home for 10 years, her fingers trembling around the handle of her suitcase. She wasn't sure how long she had been standing there. Minutes. Maybe longer. It all felt unreal. Just moments ago she had been inside. Her home. Her marriage. Her life. Now she was outside. Locked out. In the doorway stood her husband, Tund Atakunal. His face was hard, emotionless, like she was nothing more than a stranger. And beside him stood a younger woman. She was beautiful, perfectly dressed, her long hair falling over her shoulders. She looked confident, comfortable, like she belonged there. He was smiling. Her name was Halima Bello. Zainab's chest tightened as she looked between them, silently praying this was some kind of cruel joke. But then Tund spoke, his voice cold enough to freeze her soul. Halima belongs here now. You don't. The words hit harder than any slap. Zainab felt her heart break in a way she didn't know was possible. 10 years of loving him. 10 years of supporting him. 10 years of believing they were forever. And it ended in one sentence. She looked past him into the house. Her sofa. Her curtains. Her memories. And now, another woman standing in her place. Tears filled her eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of him. Tund thought he was replacing her. What he didn't know was that he was throwing away the only person who had ever truly held his world together. Everyone who knew Zainab Atakunal thought she was a weak woman. She was quiet. She didn't argue. She didn't try to prove herself. She spoke softly and always showed respect, even to people who didn't deserve it. She dressed simply, never in flashy designer clothes, never in anything that would make people turn their heads. While other women posted their luxury lives and showed off their husbands' money, Zainab stayed invisible. And people judged her for it, especially her own husband. Tund used to laugh at her sometimes, shaking his head like he was disappointed in the woman he married. You're too ordinary, Zainab, he would say. You don't have class. You don't have connections. You don't think big. Those words hurt her every time. But she never fought back. She would just smile quietly and walk away. Tund worshipped wealth. To him money was everything. Power was everything. And there was one man he admired more than anyone else in the world. His boss. Mr. Ibrahim Dikko. The great CEO of one of the biggest oil companies in Nigeria. A man people feared. A man people respected. Whenever Tund talked about him, his eyes would light up with admiration. Mr. Dikko is a real man, he would say proudly. Powerful. Rich. Respected. That's who I want to become. Tund stayed late at the office every day hoping to impress him. He attended every meeting, every event, every opportunity to be seen. His biggest dream was to rise high enough that one day he could sit in an office like Mr. Dikko's. He believed his boss was the definition of success. And when he came home he would look at Zainab and see the opposite. He saw a simple woman. A quiet wife. A nobody. What he didn't know was the truth was far bigger than his imagination. Sometimes, late at night, Tund would fall asleep on the couch, exhausted from chasing his dreams. And Zainab would sit alone watching him quietly. There was no anger in her eyes, only sadness, not because he was poor, but because he didn't see. He didn't see the sacrifices she had made for him. He didn't see the doors that had opened for him without his knowledge. He didn't see how many times his failures had been quietly erased before they could destroy his career. He believed he was climbing on his own. He believed his boss was helping him. He believed his success was his own. But behind the scenes, everything was connected to Zainab, in ways he would never imagine. In ways that, if he ever discovered the truth, would change everything he thought he knew about his ordinary wife. Halima Bello was the kind of woman people noticed the moment she walked into a room. She was Mr. Ibrahim Dikko's daughter. Rich, powerful, untouchable. She wore expensive perfume that lingered in the air long after she passed. Her clothes were always designer. Her heels clicked with confidence. And her smile made people feel like she knew something they didn't. Halima had grown up getting everything she wanted. And she never heard the word no. Not from her father. Not from the world. And definitely not from men. Especially married men. To her it wasn't about love. It was about power. It was about proving that she could take anything. And anyone. She first noticed Tund at one of her father's company events. He was standing near the corner, nervous but eager, trying hard to impress the important people in the room. His suit was nice but not expensive. His smile was polite but unsure. He looked hungry. Hungry for success. Hungry for recognition. Halima saw it immediately, and she smiled. A few days later she accidentally visited his office. She greeted him warmly, said she had heard good things about him. Tun was shocked. The boss's daughter knew his name. From that day everything changed. She started calling him, messaging him, asking him to join her for coffee, then dinner. At first he hesitated. "I'm married," he told her once. Halima just laughed softly. "Are you happy?" she asked. He didn't answer. That silence was all she needed. She began planting seeds in his mind slowly, carefully. "You're different, Tund," she would say. "You're smarter than the others. You deserve more. You deserve a woman who matches your future." And then one night she said the words that broke everything. "You deserve someone better than your poor wife." Tund didn't defend Zainab. He didn't say, "Don't talk about my wife like that." Instead he listened. Halima made him feel important. Tozen. Something Zainab had never tried to do loudly, because Zainab had always loved him quietly. Halima showed him luxury, expensive restaurants, private parties, powerful connections. She showed him the life he dreamed of. And slowly he began to feel ashamed of his own wife, ashamed of her simple clothes, ashamed of her quiet voice, ashamed of her existence. Halima knew exactly what she was doing. This was never about love. She didn't love Tund. She loved winning. And winning meant taking him, no matter who she destroyed in the process, including the quiet, ordinary woman who had never seen the knife coming. Years before the night she was thrown into the street, Zainab Atakanal was living a life no one around her truly understood. When her mother died, everything changed. Her mother had not been an ordinary woman. She had been the founder of Atakanal Holdings, a private investment company that quietly owned shares in banks, oil companies, real estate, and major businesses across Nigeria. It wasn't a company people saw on billboards. It didn't advertise. It didn't need attention. It had power. And when her mother passed away, that power passed to Zainab. Overnight, Zainab became the owner of a business empire worth over $120 million. She was young, only in her 20s, grieving, heartbroken, and suddenly responsible for hundreds of employees and millions in investments. Her advisors told her to step forward, to show her face, to take her place as CEO. But Zainab refused. She didn't want the attention. She didn't want the fame. And most of all, she didn't want people to love her for her money. So she made a decision that shocked everyone. She stayed anonymous. She became the invisible owner. She allowed trusted executives to run the companies publicly while she remained in the background, watching quietly, making decisions silently. One of those executives was a man named Ibrahim Dikko. Smart, experienced, confident. He became the public face of one of the biggest oil companies under Atakanal Holdings. To the world he was the boss. People respected him, feared him, admired him, including Tund. But what Tund never knew, what he never even imagined, was that his powerful boss was not the real owner. He was just an employee. And his real boss was Zainab. Every major decision he made had to be approved by her first. Every promotion, every investment, every opportunity, including Tund's. Years ago, when Tund was struggling in his career, when he was close to losing his job because of mistakes he made, it was Zainab who stepped in quietly. She never told him. She never took credit. She simply gave the order. Keep him. Give him another chance. And Mr. Dikko obeyed. Not because he wanted to, but because he answered to her. Zainab never told Tund the truth. She wanted him to succeed on his own. She wanted him to love her for who she was, not for what she owned. So at night she came home to him like an ordinary wife. She cooked for him. She supported him. She listened to his dreams about becoming successful, not knowing he was already sleeping beside the woman who controlled that success. The woman he called ordinary was the most powerful person in his world. And he had no idea. Zainab stood on the quiet street, her suitcase beside her, and finally let the tears fall. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears that rolled down her cold face. The house behind her was still lit. Through the window she could see shadows moving. She knew those shadows. She knew that living room. She knew that life. And now, it was no longer hers. But the pain she felt wasn't because she lost the house. It was because of the betrayal. Her mind began replaying memories she had buried for years. She remembered the day Tund came home stressed and ashamed, telling her he was drowning in debt. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't breathe. He thought his life was over. She never told him the truth. She simply made one phone call. And his debt disappeared. He thought it was luck. It was her. She remembered when he wanted to go back to school to get his executive degree, but he said he couldn't afford it. He was ready to give up on his dream. She told him softly, "Don't worry. Something will work out." A week later he received an anonymous sponsorship. He was so happy. He never knew it was his own wife who paid every single fee. She remembered the night he came home terrified, saying he might lose his job because of a mistake at work. He was shaking, broken, hopeless. That same night while he slept, she sat in the dark and made another call. The next morning his boss told him everything was fine. He called it a miracle. But it was never a miracle. It was Zainab. He protected him. She carried him. He built the road he was walking on. And he never even asked how. He never asked how things always worked out. He never asked what she sacrificed, because he never cared enough to see her. To him, she was just ordinary. Zainab wiped her tears slowly. Her hands were no longer shaking. For the first time that night, something inside her began to change. The pain was still there. But beneath the pain, there was clarity. She realized something important. She had lost a husband. But she had found herself. She looked down at her suitcase. It suddenly felt lighter. Not because it weighed less, but because she was no longer carrying him. She took a deep breath. She could beg. She could knock on that door. She could ask him to choose her. But she didn't, because she finally understood her worth. And that night, standing alone on the street where her old life ended, Zainab made a decision. She would not beg. She would not break. She would rise. Everyone who ever doubted her would see exactly who she really was. 2 weeks later, Tund walked into the company headquarters with a smile he couldn't hide. His shoes shined. His suit was perfectly pressed. His heart was full of confidence. Today was the day. After everything that happened, after leaving Zainab and starting his new life with Halima, he believed his future was finally opening. Halima had promised him that her father would take care of him. She told him he deserved more. A better position. More power. More money. And today he was sure he was getting promoted. As he walked through the office, people greeted him politely. He held his head higher than usual. He felt important. Then his phone rang. It was a message from Mr. Ibrahim Dicko. "Come to my office. Now." Tun's heart raced with excitement. This was it. He adjusted his jacket and walked quickly to the top floor. He knocked once. "Come in," the voice answered. When Tund entered, he expected to see the usual powerful, confident man sitting behind the desk. But something was different. Mr. Dicko didn't look confident. He looked tense. His face was tight. His fingers were locked together on the desk. There was something in his eyes Tund had never seen before. Fear. Tund frowned slightly. "Sir," he said carefully. Mr. Dicko didn't smile. Instead he said something strange. "The owner is coming today." Tund blinked. "The owner?" he asked. He had worked at the company for years. Everyone knew Mr. Dicko was the boss. The most powerful man there. At least, that's what everyone believed. Mr. Dicko swallowed slowly. Yes, the real owner. Tund felt confused. He had never heard this before. Nobody had. Nobody had ever seen the real owner. Nobody even knew who it was. The room suddenly felt heavier. Before Tund could ask another question, there was a knock on the door. Both men turned. Mr. Dicko stood up immediately. Not casually. Respectfully. Nervously. "Come in," he said. The door opened. And time stopped. A woman walked in. Her steps were calm, confident, powerful. She wore an elegant suit. Her hair was perfectly styled. Her face was calm, strong, and impossible to ignore. Tund's heart stopped. His body froze. His mind refused to understand what his eyes were seeing. Because the woman standing in front of him was his wife, Zainab. But not the Zainab he remembered. This Zainab was different. She wasn't quiet. She wasn't weak. She wasn't ordinary. He looked like someone the world listened to. Someone the world feared. Someone the world respected. Mr. Dicko lowered his head slightly. "Welcome, ma'am," he said. "Ma'am." The word echoed inside Tund's mind. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't speak. He couldn't move. He realized in that moment, the woman he threw out was the most powerful person in the room. Tund felt his entire body freeze. His hands began to shake so badly he had to hide them behind his back. His mouth went dry. His heart was beating so fast it almost hurt. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Zainab walked into the room like she belonged there. No hesitation. No fear. No sadness. Just calm, quiet power. Behind Tund, Halima was standing near the door. She had followed him earlier, curious to see the owner her father was so nervous about. But now, Her face had lost all its color. Her confident smile was gone. She looked scared. Zainab didn't even look at her. She walked past both of them and moved toward the main chair. And something happened that Tund would never forget for the rest of his life. Everyone stood up. Every single person in the room. Senior managers. Executives. Even Mr. Ibrahim Dicko himself, the powerful man Tund admired for years, lowered his head. "Welcome, ma'am," he said respectfully. "Ma'am." Not Zainab. Not Mrs. Adekunle. Not his wife. "Ma'am." "Boss." The word hit Tund harder than anything else. His legs felt weak. His mind was screaming, trying to understand. This was the same woman he threw out. The same woman he called ordinary. The same woman he replaced. No. Everyone was bowing to her. Zainab sat down calmly, like this was normal for her. Like she had done it 1,000 times before. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look emotional. She looked in control. Tund finally found his voice, but it came out broken. Zainab? It was barely a whisper. She turned her head slowly and looked at him. Not with love. Not with pain. Not even with anger. She looked at him the way people look at strangers on the street. Like he meant nothing. That look destroyed him. He took a small step forward. His chest tight. His eyes wide. He wanted to speak. To ask questions. To understand. But the truth was already clear. Halima stood frozen behind him, her eyes moving between Zainab and her father. She looked confused, afraid. Bez, her father, the man she believed owned everything, was standing like an employee. In front of Zainab. The room was silent, heavy, painful. And in that silence, Tund realized something that made his stomach drop. He hadn't just lost his wife, he had lost someone far greater. He had lost the most powerful person in his world. And he was the one who threw her away. The silence in the room was so heavy it felt hard to breathe. Tund stood there, frozen, staring at Zainab like he was looking at a ghost. His mind kept telling him this wasn't possible. This wasn't his quiet, simple wife. This was someone else. But it was her. Zainab sat calmly in the chair, her fingers resting lightly on the table. She looked around the room once, then spoke. Her voice was soft, but powerful. "I built this company." The words landed like thunder. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Tund felt his ears ringing. He thought he heard wrong. But then she continued. "I am the owner of Adekunle Holdings. This oil company is one of our investments." She paused for a second. And then she said the words that completely destroyed him. "I hired Mr. Dicko." Tund's knees almost gave up. He turned slowly and looked at Mr. Dicko. The man he admired. The man he respected. The man he wanted to become. And Mr. Dicko couldn't even look him in the eye. He simply stood there, silent, respectful, like an employee. Because that's exactly what he was. Zainab's employee. Tund felt dizzy. His entire life began replaying in his head. All the nights he came home complaining about his boss. Not knowing his wife was the real boss. All the times he begged for opportunities. Not knowing his wife was the one giving them to him. All the times he called her ordinary. Not knowing she controlled everything. His job. His salary. His promotions. His success. His entire future. It was all her. The woman he threw out like she was nothing. Was the reason he was everything. His chest tightened with shame. He remembered calling her weak. He remembered choosing Halima over her. He remembered locking her out of the house. No. He stood in her office. Not as her husband, but as a nobody. Zainab looked at him, her face calm and unreadable. "There were times you made mistakes," she said quietly. "Serious mistakes." Tund's heart pounded. "I told Mr. Dicko to give you another chance." His eyes widened. She continued. "I approved your training sponsorship." Another shock. "I protected your position." Every word felt like a knife. All this time, he thought he was strong. He thought he was smart. He thought he was rising on his own. But the truth was painful. He was only standing. Because she never let him fall. No. He had destroyed the one person who had always protected him. Not knowing. She was the one holding his entire world in her hands. By the time the meeting ended, Tund's world was already in pieces. He didn't remember how he walked out of the room. He didn't remember what anyone said. All he knew was that Zainab was leaving. And he couldn't let her go. He rushed down the hallway, his heart pounding, his vision blurry with tears. "Zainab," he shouted. His voice cracked. He kept walking. Her steps were calm, controlled. Like she didn't hear him. Like he didn't exist. He ran faster. "Zainab, please." This time his voice was desperate. She reached the exit doors and just as she stepped outside he caught up to her. "Please, wait." She stopped. slowly. But she didn't turn around immediately. Tund stood behind her, breathing hard, his chest rising and falling. This was the first time in years he felt small, weak, afraid. When she finally turned to face him, her expression was calm. No tears. No anger. No pain. And that hurt him more than anything. He broke down. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice shaking. "Please forgive me." Tears rolled down his face. "I made a mistake. I swear I didn't know. I didn't understand." She said nothing. He stepped closer. "I love you, Zainab," he cried. "I've always loved you. Please, please don't do this." For a moment there was silence between them. Only the sound of his crying. Only the sound of his regret. Zainab looked at him carefully. This was the man she had loved for 10 years. The man she had protected. The man she had sacrificed for. The man who threw her away. And when she spoke, her voice was calm. Honest. "You didn't love me, Tund." He froze. Her words were not loud. But they were final. "You loved power," she continued softly. "You loved status. You loved what you thought Halima could give you." Another tear fell from his eye. She held his gaze. "But you never loved me." He felt his heart shatter. But deep down, he knew she was right. She took one small step back. Not in fear, but in distance. In closure. In goodbye. "I deserved better," she said. Then she turned around. And walked away. He didn't follow her this time. He couldn't. He stood there, broken, watching the woman he betrayed walk out of his life. Not as his wife. Not as his victim. But as someone far beyond his reach. And in that moment, Tun realized, he hadn't lost her when he threw her out. He lost her when he failed to see her worth. No. She was gone. Forever. Months passed and life had completely changed for both of them. Tund woke up one morning to find his world falling apart. His job, the one he had worked so hard to climb into, was gone. His status, the thing he had chased for years, vanished overnight. Even his reputation, the image he thought was untouchable, crumbled in front of everyone's eyes. People he once considered friends avoided him. Business deals he thought were his forever slipped through his fingers. And worst of all, Halima, the woman who had promised him the world, left him too. Alone, powerless, and invisible, he wandered through life like a shadow of the man he used to be. Meanwhile, Zainab's life had taken a completely different path. Quietly, carefully, she built her empire. She became one of Nigeria's most powerful businesswomen. Her name carried weight. Her decisions changed companies. Her vision shaped industries. Yet despite all the power, she stayed humble. She treated people with kindness, listened to her employees, and remained grounded. Her strength was quiet but unshakable. She never sought revenge. She didn't need to. Her greatest victory wasn't watching Tund fail. It was knowing her own worth. Knowing that she had the power all along, and that her life, her freedom, and her happiness were hers to claim. And in the end, the truth was undeniable. He had thrown her out thinking she was nothing. But she was the reason he had ever been everything. Her quiet strength, her sacrifices, her intelligence. All the things he had ignored were the very foundation of his life. And now, standing tall, Zainab finally had what she deserved: freedom, respect, and the knowledge that she was unstoppable.